Hello, everybody, and welcome back to coverage of GP Providence. I'm Gabby Sparks, joined today by Luis Scott Vargas, and we're heading into round 11. This is Zachary Kiihne versus Andrew Cuneo, and we're going to see a matchup of white-blue flash versus white-blue control. So this is kind of what you were mentioning before. We're seeing like the small version of the deck versus the big version of the deck.
And that means that there's more pressure on Zachary to try to close out this game before Andrew's more powerful late game kind of comes into effect.
All right, so it looks like Zachary's going to kick things off with a Smuggler's Copter. And can you give us a little rundown of what you expect would happen in a matchup like this?
Well, Andrew would have been great if Andrew had a negate there, but he does have cards like Blessed Alliance and Stasis Snare. So often, you know, Smuggler's Copter is going to attempt to get in there, and Andrew's just going to have an answer. He built his deck with this in mind, and actually we see a heads-up play from Zachary here. He's not crewing the Copter and attacking, which means that Andrew did not get a chance to use any of the removal spells in his hand this turn.
Yeah, and we do see that there's an Immolating Glare in Andrew's hand, so very nice play there by Zachary. He gets a chance to also flash in that Rattle Chains.
Yeah, both players on 10-0 here, so that the tournament's going well so far, and I'm not surprised to see Zachary playing around the cards in Andrew's hand fairly effectively.
All right, so here's removal spell number 1. Blessed Alliance is going to take care of that Thraben Inspector.
Yeah, not the most profitable trade there for Andrew Cuneo.
Not particularly exciting, no. All right, it looks like a follow-up Thraben Inspector for Zachary, providing him another clue as well. And we're going to see a pass back to Andrew. Once again, just a tap land and a ship back. Oh, and it looks like Zachary's drawn a Gideon for this turn.
And here is where all of Andrew's removal spells maybe not quite as effective as they would be otherwise, because even though he's got ways to kill a lot of Zachary's creatures, Thraben Inspectors and Gideons all give you an advantage before they go away.
All right, so the Stasis Snare takes care of the Copter, but this does give Zachary a window here if he wants to try to resolve this Gideon.
And I suspect
which he does.
that is why Zachary attacked this turn. He was playing around removal spells, but this turn he likely figured, if Andrew has a removal spell for Copter, I resolve Gideon. If he doesn't kill the Copter, then I get to attack with the Copter, and maybe I wait on the Gideon. So this worked out, I think, according to plan for Zachary.
Andrew's going to play another land and pass the turn back, and still no presence on the battlefield. Zachary's threatening to start bashing with his Gideon as well if he so chooses. Looks like he's going to attack with all his creatures first.
Yeah, and he's getting a pretty good advantage here because Andrew's deck is designed to play well when the board is clear, has a lot of counter spells in his hand. I think I saw like 2 Void Shatters in his hand. But once he's this far behind, then just going to be difficult for him to catch up. He doesn't have very many ways to turn such a losing board position into a good one.
Wow, so that Avacyn is going to meet a Stasis Snare, and Zachary continues to crank out an army of knights here.
Avacyn could have done some good work. If she resolved and got to attack Gideon, then Andrew would be in good shape all of a sudden. But having that Stasis Snare means that Zachary just there's nothing stopping him from just continuing to bash.
All right, we're going to see another land and an attack from all the creatures. Let's see what Cuneo can do about this. Looks like an Immolating Glare. And that will take care of the Rattle Chains. However, this army of tokens that is coming his way, he's going to have to find a better way to deal with all of this.
And Torrential Gearhulk is the kind of card that can offer Andrew what he's looking for here, but he's just got so many things he has to deal with, including this now Archangel.
This now Avacyn?
Yeah, that I don't know that it would be very easy for him to do so.
All right, so Cuneo says that's okay. We're going to see an untap and a pass back to Zachary.
So if Cuneo has the Torrential Gearhulk and Zachary animates the Gideon, Cuneo still ends up dying because he can Gearhulk back Immolating Glare to kill Avacyn. But Zachary has the option of playing a pre-combat Selfless Spirit, which will make Immolating Glare less relevant.
It looks like everyone is bashing at Cuneo.
course, if Cuneo doesn't have Torrential Gear Hulk, then this thing is not as easy for him.
All right, so there is the Torrential Gear Hulk. We're going to see flashing back the Immolating Glare, and it is targeting Avacyn. All right, so Avacyn does go down. Gear Hulk in front of one of the knights.
I mean, that was step one. Cuneo's now at 1, but at least he didn't die this turn. There were a lot of ways for him to die this turn immediately. So he's at least bought himself another turn here.
All right, so a follow-up Selfless Spirit.
And Cuneo is going to need something pretty impactful to survive this turn. And the way Cuneo builds his decks and is to a lot of 1-for-1s. He doesn't have Fumigate. He has instead Blessed Alliance, Immolating Glare, Stasis Snare, all these cards that trade 1-for-1. And instead, what that means is that when he gets this far behind, he's facing down 5 creatures and is at 1 life. It's just not easy for him to get out of it. Blessed Alliance helps a little bit because it gains life, but he's able to he's still able to fall too far behind and get to a point where he's at best buying himself turns, not really progressing.
All right, so it looks like the Gear Hulk will be attacking, but Zachary makes a knight jump in front of it. He's also going to take the opportunity to crack a clue. All right, and it looks like the draw for the turn is a Spell Queller.
Well, it makes things even safer.
All right, Gideon animating and becoming a creature, and now everybody is getting into the red zone. These are a lot of lethal threats, Andrew Cuneo. Can you do anything?
He can play fully escalated Blessed Alliance, gaining life, going up to 5, untapping his Gear Hulk, and forcing Zachary to sacrifice a creature. And, well, he tried.
He tried. It was a valiant attempt, but there was that Spell Queller in Zachary's hand. So this Zachary takes the first game, proving him to 1-0 here at GP Providence. Louis, taking a look at these players' decks once they move post board, who do you think it favors?
Both players aren't going to change dramatically post board here because, first of all, Cuneo has built his deck with Blue-White Flash in mind already. There's just not that many things he can do to change the matchup. And then Zachary, he's playing Blue-White Flash, which is also built with control in mind. So, but I would expect both of them to maybe board in a few more counter spells, maybe take out the removal spells that aren't as good. So seeing more counter spells post board is interesting, maybe more Planeswalkers. But again, neither deck can fundamentally shift their game plan that much. I am looking forward to some counter battles, though. When we get some Negate, Dispel, Void Shatter, Spell Queller stacks, those are pretty sweet.
I was going to say, look, these decks are already pretty interactive as is, and, going post-board, they're just going to continue to try to find ways to interact with each other. And Spell Queller kind of puts a dent in some of those, too.
Yeah,
he's like a counter spell, but not really.
Yes, one of the reasons Spell Queller is so brutally effective against something like Aetherworks Marvel is that the dispels and negates that these decks often play just don't particularly help. It would be pretty sweet if we saw Andrew bring in a Cataclysmic Gear Hulk, but I suspect this is maybe not the matchup for that. The Gisela the Broken Blade, though, can potentially offer him a bit more interaction in the air here.
There on the right, we see Andrew Cuneo. He has 2 PT top 4s to his name. And he has 4 GP top 8s, most recently in Houston 2016. And then previously in GP Cleveland 2011.
Yeah, he's a member of the Pantheon and heralded as one of the best control deck builders. He generally tends to play control decks, blue-white, Jeskai, blue-black. These are the kind of decks he's played at the Pro Tours over the last couple of years and does well with them. He actually had a streak where he finished in the top 50 of 4 Pro Tours in a row, and he was platinum and one of the highest pro point totals that year without top 8ing any of the Pro Tours.
Really? That's nuts.
Yeah, if he had distributed his wins a little bit better, he would have rather like win one more match to one of the Pro Tours and
Well,
one
yeah,
fewer than
obviously.
the other. And then maybe pick up a top 8 or 2. But yeah, still a very consistent finisher here.
Zachary Kiihne on the other side from Concord, Massachusetts. He more of a grinder, but he finished 40th at Grand Prix New York, and he got 6th at the last RPTQ, so he's definitely starting to get more of that local level success.
Yeah, and speaking of distributing his wins, one more win in either of those scenarios, and he may have been able to qualify for the Pro Tour. But he's on a good start here. He's 10-0 in the Grand Prix, so he's well on his way.
Most definitely. In any event, this game is underway. The Smuggler's Copter meets a negate, and as you mentioned, we're starting to see a little bit more interaction and more counter spells. The Selfless Spirit does get to resolve, and Cuneo gets to anticipate as well.
And this is a lot safer of a situation for Cuneo than last game, where there was a Smuggler's Copter in play last game, which meant that Zachary just at any point could crew it and send it over. Cuneo can take 2 damage from the Selfless Spirit and not really break a sweat.
Looks like Zachary is going to attempt to resolve a Gideon, which is going to meet a Void Shatter. Andrew's just going to play another land and pass back. There you see Void Shatter. The fact that it manages to exile spells on its way out has proven very relevant in the standard format so far.
Yeah, there's cards like, we saw Metalwork Colossus get exiled last week at the Pro Tour, and in very relevant situations like control decks playing against the Colossus deck. It does make cards like Haunted Dead, if you ever try to cast it, getting exiled, a pretty big drawback for the player who's expecting to be able to utilize their graveyard. Also, it's just a 3-mana counterspell, in this case, where it doesn't matter that the Gideon is exiled. That's still what Andrew's deck wants.
So the Selfless Spirit is doing solid work here. It continues to peck away at Andrew Cuneo's life total. It's dropping him at 14, and now he's going to attempt to resolve Gideon number 2, which is going to be the Spell Queller, which cannot be negated.
Yeah, that interaction just comes up all the time, and like you said, Spell Queller is just the trump in the counter wars because the cheap counters like negate just don't do anything.
All right, so coming in from the sideboard, it seems, Andrew Green has brought this Gisela, the Broken Blade, and Zachary has no response to this.
And note that Andrew did not attack with his Spell Queller, potentially out of fear of something like Immolating Glare, or more likely because if Gisela gets removed, he'd rather keep Spell Queller back to block Selfless Spirit.
All right, so it looks like that Stasis Snare threatening to take care of, well, whatever Zachary wants.
Yeah, both of the cards Andrew has in play are pretty valid targets. Gisela is appealing because she threatens to attack Gideon back if you take Spell Queller. So Gisela, I think, is one of the things Andrew or Zachary is thinking about. But getting back a Gideon immediately is definitely tempting as well.
It does look like that's what he's opting for. He does activate that Gideon, getting a knight in the process.
Though I think if I'm Andrew, I'm fairly happy with how that turned out, because Gisela does get to attack Gideon now, and if Zachary doesn't have an answer to Gisela, then she will take out Gideon fairly quickly.
All right, so Stasis Snare for Andrew Cuneo, which is going to be in the gate, and no more counters after that. So, all right, now Gisela is going to attempt to attack Gideon. That Selfless Spirit jumps in front, takes one for the team.
And Zachary even gets to sack it, so Andrew doesn't gain life.
All right, so Gideon getting aggressive here, taking up and attacking along with a knight ally. This drops Cuneo down to 7. Oh, but Glimmer of Genius is a follow-up here for Andrew. That is going to get Spell Quellered. You were talking about these counterspell wars. You were right.
Yeah, both players just, stopping opposing spells from happening. Like they both countered like 2 spells at this point. Actually, Cuneo's countered 3. And that just means that they're going to operate on fewer resources and have fewer, relevant plays. Like that Glimmer would have set this turn up quite nicely for Andrew. Though, given that Immolating Glare in hand, I think he's actually pretty happy because the 4 life he gained off Gisela means that he's not going to die this turn even if things go poorly for him.
All right, so Gideon continuing to take up after getting knocked down at 1. It did not kill him, though. He is going to be attacking with both creatures. It looks like that Spellqueller might be staying at home.
Yeah, and Zachary has continued to respect Andrew having removal spells like Immolating Glare. We saw that in Game 1 when he didn't attack with Smuggler's Copter, and looks like we're seeing it now.
So both Gideon and Knight into the red zone. Let's see if Andrew has anything to say about that.
And Andrew might be getting to the point where he needs to use Immolating Glare on the Knight token. It can't kill Gideon because Gideon's indestructible, but Immolating Glare still will save Andrew a couple points of damage if he wants to use it. He's not obliged to because Gisela does gain him life every turn, but it is a possibility.
All right, so it seems like Stasis Snare is coming in and will be ambushing that Spellqueller, which allows Andrew to cast that Glimmer of Genius.
And if this all happens the way, according to Andrew's plan, he gets to cast that Glimmer. He gets to then attack Gideon with Gisela, and at that point, Andrew's in firm control of the game.
It looks like Zachary is getting really close to actually sealing the deal. But yeah, without that Gisela, without that Gideon, things are looking much grimmer.
And Zachary did go for the more aggressive play a few turns ago. Remember, he Stasis Snared Andrew's Spellqueller, which got him his Gideon back. But that meant that Gisela would just sit there, and she's just chipping away, gaining 4 life a turn for Andrew. So had Zachary Stasis Snared Gisela, this game would have been very different.
All right, it looks like Fragmentize is going to be able to get one of those. He's choosing which one. All right, so Spellcaller comes back, and away goes that Stasis Snare, and Cuneo's going to follow up by anticipating. So Zachary's forces are starting to grow, but still having to deal with that Gisela on the other side of the battlefield.
Zachary bringing in Fragmentize does somewhat indicate to me that he doesn't know Andrew's full deck list, because Fragmentize to kill just Stasis Snare is not as enticing as Fragmentize also killing Smuggler's Copter. So Zachary might be thinking that Andrew has Smuggler's Copter in his deck.
Could think they're on the same. He could think that they're on a very similar deck. They're playing a lot of similar spells so far.
Yeah, if I were Zachary, after the cards I'd seen Game 1, I would have put Cuneo in a slightly more controlling deck. You did see Torrential Gearhulk, but that doesn't rule out a bigger version of Blue-White Flash. And I mean, that is what Andrew's playing. He may have Copters, he may not. As it turns out, he doesn't.
Oh, yeah, Archangel Avacyn coming in, attempting to ambush the Spellqueller, and successfully manages to do so. Zachary following up with a Smuggler's Copter, and things are slipping away for Zachary here.
Yeah, this pair of Angels is just taking giant chunks out of his life total. Zachary's actually facing lethal next turn.
All right, we're going to see a follow-up land from Andrew and a pass back to Zachary. Can he find anything off the top? Smuggler's Copter attacking, looting, and that is the game. Andrew Cuneo takes game 2 here, round 11 at GP Providence. They're going to force a game 3.
Yeah, and actually, chat brings up a good point that maybe Zachary wants Fragmentize for Quarantine Field, because even though Quarantine Field costs 6 or 8 mana when you play it, while it's in play, it is able to be fragmentized. So, and Quarantine Field is a card that Andrew has access to. Well, one of total, but still, it's a powerful card, and being able to kill it is relevant.
Do you have any idea? Obviously, it's impossible to know. We can't really go back in time, except only Time Walk, in which case we can travel very easily.
Here, we're traveling sideways in time.
We
right
are
now.
traveling sideways. I'll bring this up when we go back to our main match. But in the meantime, let's take a peek and see Alexander Hayne versus Phillip Napoli. So we have 4-color control, and did you get to talk to Alex about his deck?
Yeah, I talked to him and Christian Calcano about the deck.
Are they on the same deck?
They're both playing. It's basically a Grixis deck splashing Lumbering Falls. And Nissa. It is...
What?
Yeah, Nissa Vital Force, which costs double green.
Okay, explain.
So they wanted to play a red-blue deck with a good amount of removal. You see, look, 6 red spells in Alex's graveyard.
Okay.
And they're playing Void Shatters and Glimmer of Genius, but splashing black for Unlicensed Disintegration and green for Lumbering Falls and Nissa. I can't say I fully understand the green splash as much as the black splash, but with Alex at 8-2, presumably things have been working out so far.
That seems like one of those situations where you just keep adding stuff, and you're like, you know what would be sweet? If we also had Lumbering Falls in the deck, and if we could cast Unlicensed Disintegration.
Well, knowing Alex Hayne and Christian Calcano, I suspect that's not so far from the truth.
Looks like that Dynavolt Tower is going to be able to finish off that Depala. So Alex is still at 5, but Phillip does not have much of an attacking force here. It looks like the We'll see what Alex has to say about this. Looks like a lumbering falls. Might be hitting the battlefield here. Jumping in front of the veteran motorist. So this drops Alex down to 1.
Yeah, the needle spires getting in for a good amount of damage there and putting Alex in a position where even if he has a sweeper, he's got to remember to deal with that needle spires.
And it doesn't look like Alex has any energy too, so...
Well, this early in the morning, I mean, most people tend not to.
We should go get him some coffee.
I actually saw Alex make a pretty sweet play yesterday. He's one of the feature matches that didn't make it on camera. He had Dynavolt Tower in play, was facing down lethal, and he had to play a spell and then negate his own spell to gain 4 energy to trigger his Dynavolt Tower.
That's so sick.
Yeah. He lost that game, but it was a sweet play.
Hey, you got to respect the sweet play even if it doesn't always get there. You got to give yourself the best chance.
Yeah, and making sweet plays like that does mean you remember them for the future, and maybe some games you'll win because of stuff like that.
All right, so it looks like that Needle Spires and the Exemplar are coming into the battlefield, but out comes a Torrential Gear Hulk. Flashing back that Harness Lightning.
Oh, yeah, this is
a beating.
This is gross, because Alex is going to end up with 4 energy at the end of all this, thanks to the Harness Lightning triggering the Dynavolt Tower, and then...
And he just gets to eat the Exemplar, too.
Oh, yeah. Torrential Gear Hulk just grabs that tiny little Exemplar.
Yeah. Chucked it to the... It's like the little people that are in front of it. He just, like, grabs them and chucks them to the other side.
Yeah, I guess if you look at Torrential Gear Hulk, the scale of that card is deceptive. There's, like, tiny little people.
Yeah, there's tiny little people. Looks like a Thraben Inspector is a follow-up for Phillip, but things are... Even though Alex is at 1 life, and it looks like this... So even though, interestingly enough, even though this match... even though Alex is at 1 life, it looks like this match might still be going for a while because Alex still needs to close out this game. So in the meantime, let's move back to our main match and see the end of Zachary Kiihne versus Andrew Cuneo.
Yeah, and you know, going back to that match for a second, Alex, yes, despite being at 1, I think Alex actually was in control of the game. So it was not going to resolve very quickly.
All right, so it looks like Spell Queller is able to ambush that Smuggler's Copter.
Another thing that won't resolve very quickly.
Yes. Maybe eventually. Not quickly, though. A land is the draw for Zachary. All right, I see 5 mana. Revealing that Plains for the Port Town.
And I have to admire Zachary's dedication to make sure all of his basic lands are different. He's got... he's running the Royal Sampler here.
Why you gotta be so judgmental of people's lands?
No, I was saying it was impressive. It was paying him a compliment.
I see that look.
Yeah, but no one else did, so now you ruined it.
Archangel Avacyn entering the battlefield, and let's see what Zachary has to say about that. It looks like Stasis Snare is the answer. Oh, interesting. So Stasis Snare is actually going to take that Spell Queller, which means that Zachary ends up a Smuggler's Copter. So Archangel Avacyn gets to bash here. Yeah,
but Archangel Avacyn's still kind of dominating the field. Neither Smuggler's Copter nor Rattle Chains can really tangle with Archangel, so Zachary's going to need another answer for her before he's able to start attacking. And now that Andrew has all his mana untapped, it's a pretty good chance Andrew's got a counterspell in hand. But, you know, that's just true of Andrew Cuneo in general. If I just think of Andrew Cuneo, it's like, yeah, pretty good chance he's got a counterspell in hand. I don't really know what he's playing or what he's doing or where he is, but he's probably got a counterspell.
His Magic Online username is Gainsay.
Yes, that is true. It is actually just literally a counterspell.
All right, so Stasis Snare coming down for Zachary. And it is able to take down that Avacyn. Looks like Rattle Chains flying into the chopper. Oh, and Andrew has not 1 but 3 Immolating Glares in hand, I believe.
All right, so I guess Andrew's actually not very heavy on counterspells and just has all removal and Torrential Gear Hulks. I think this is actually going to work out all right for Andrew.
Yep, so the Stasis Snare takes care of the Spell Queller, and the first Immolating Glare takes care of the Smuggler's Copter. All right, so it looks like both creatures are going to be getting in. Andrew's still with a couple of Immolating Glares in hand. First Immolating Glare. Oh, and Selfless Spirit with Flash. thanks to the rattle chains, but the second immolating glare takes care of the other one. Oh, and a Jace Unraveler of Secrets for Zachary?
This is a great follow-up because Jace is exactly the kind of card you want against an opponent full of removal spells, immolating glares, and whatnot.
The not usually seen part of text in rattle chains is that it gives spirits, other spirits, flash as well. So it looks like Zachary has a Selfless Spirit and a Negate in hand, but continues to draw cards thanks to this Jace. He's chosen the other one as well.
So Andrew did draw a Negate, but I feel a little bit too late. And I think that all he really wants to draw is a 6 land so he can start deploying Gear Hulks. Just as 5-6 flashes to kind of combat that Jace.
So that Spellqueller is going to ambush that Selfless Spirit, and the Thraben Inspector is a follow-up for Zachary. Looks like a Spellqueller continuing to try to chip away at this Jace, but Jace starts out at very high loyalty.
Yeah, and Cuneo really does need to draw a 6 land. He keeps drawing Immolating Glares and Stasis Snares, and he really just needs to get one of his Gear Hulks into play. Because Zach is drawing, not only literally drawing 2 cards a turn, draw step plus Jace. Jace also gets to scry first, so it's almost like Zach's drawing 2.5 cards a turn because he gets to scry the undesirable ones to the bottom.
To be fair to Zach, he's drawn like 3 lands in the last 3 turns.
Yeah, and that is not exactly what he wants.
He just has a counter spell in hand is the only thing. Spellqueller continuing to chip at that Jace.
Got to appreciate the pace of play of these players. This is not a time walk.
Yes, FYI, this is actually happening in real time. It's not. The joke is usually that the players play this fast when we speed it up. Looks like both players are just very seasoned with the deck and know kind of exactly what their decks are trying to do. It looks like Zachary has found a Gideon off the top.
This is going to prompt a counter war, but Zach, I think, is ahead in Negate in this exchange.
Yeah, he does have a Negate. So Negate meets Negate. Yes, then Cuneo can't do anything about that, and the Gideon hits the battlefield, creating a Knight ally. And a Westvale Abbey for Zachary. We know that all is left in this hand is lands, but he's got a very commanding board position here. And can Cuneo find a land?
Cuneo did anticipate, but we'll see if he found a 6 land here. It looks like he did.
Yeah, it looks like a Westvale Abbey. So Spellqueller continuing to chip. Westvale Abbey is the 6th land.
All right, this is going to get good because Torrential Gear Hulk into Anticipate or Immolating Glare, both are pretty big swings. Also, Zach could potentially tap out, for a spell, and then Cuneo could maybe be able to go Torrential Gear Hulk and negate.
All right, so Gideon is ticking up this time. Going to be attacking with the Thraben Inspector as well.
And it looks like Andrew's actually content taking the damage to maybe keep up the Gear Hulk negate line of play.
Jace ticking up. And Zachary's found an Archangel Avacyn. It's going to follow up with a Smuggler's Copter.
And I think there's a good chance this does prompt the Gear Hulk here.
It does. Gear Hulk coming down. Flashing back that negates. And it takes care of the Smuggler's Copter. We're going to see a pass back to Andrew.
And things can go very poorly for Andrew here. If he stasis snares that Knight token before attacking, then Avacyn completely wrecks Andrew. But because of the Westvale Abbey, Andrew doesn't have a ton of incentive to do that. I think there's a just good chance if he attacks, Zachary flashes an Avacyn, Andrew can stasis snare Avacyn because it looks like he's got a stasis snare in hand. After which Zachary does get to block with the Knight token on the Gear Hulk, but the Spellqueller comes in for 2.
All right, so it looks like the Knight ally does jump in front of the Gear Hulk.
And it looks like Zachary's being pretty patient here.
Yeah, he's going to use his Westvale Abbey to make a Cleric.
And choosing not to deploy Avacyn quite yet. So he's avoiding getting hit by removal and choosing to just, by using Abbey, not really expose any of his cards to one of Andrew's counters.
All right, Gideon continues to take up.
You know, Zach also has a pretty decent mana advantage here, which you said earlier, like, yeah, he drew 3 land in a row off Jace. And that is true, but that doesn't mean that he's able to play multiple spells in the same turn, where we see Andrew tapping out over and over again. So Zach may be able to leverage that if he actually draws some spells here.
Yeah, I mean, he's just drawn a lot more cards than Andrew has. Looks like Torrential Gearhulk coming back down. Flashing back that Anticipate.
Yeah, I think this is going to work out pretty well for Andrew. And he can block Gideon and just take 1 point of damage going down to 7 here.
Yep, and that's exactly what happens.
See, look, the tiny people in front of the Gearhulk.
Yeah. Is that Gideon? That does not look like the fair fight.
Gideon's got to be a lot bigger than that, right?
I assume so. It's a 5/5.
Yeah. Looks like Jace finally took a break from drawing cards.
The Raven Inspector's the follow-up, providing another clue as well.
And all of a sudden, by bouncing that Spellcaller,
yeah.
Zachary is in a position where he's getting very close to Ormondal. He's got 4 creatures in play, plus the Gideon, so there's a chance that he could flip Westvale Abbey. Though that is a dicey play against an opponent playing Stasis Snares and potentially Blessed Alliance.
A couple of them have been used already, but it is, I agree, very scary. Looks like the Raven Inspector jumping in front of the Gearhulk. Zachary's going to go ahead and crack another clue.
We haven't seen the Profane Prince make an appearance quite yet at this Grand Prix, though we've seen a number of Westvale Abbeys.
I don't think we really saw Ormondal make an appearance at the Pro Tour either.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is that previous Standard had green-white tokens, and that was a very good Westvale Abbey deck. Secure the Wastes also being part of it, whereas these decks just play Westvale Abbey as kind of a value card. They're not really looking to Ormondal all that often.
All right, so it looks like Archangel Avacyn is coming down for Zachary, and that's going to meet a Stasis Snare. Speaking of being scared about making Ormondal.
Yes. Cuneo still in exactly 6 lands, so this turn he's going to be able to play Stasis Snare and leave up Spell Queller, but still, he would love just an electional land or 2. He's got a bunch of excess cards in hand he's not really going to get to over the course of this game.
Man, these Gearhulk look so good. They're the perfect size to block Gideon.
Yeah, Torrential Gearhulk has really impressed over the course of this format, and it is one of the cards that really makes Andrew's deck work. Because when you play a control deck, you have to ask yourself, why do I care about getting to 6 or 7 lands? What bonus do I get by playing all this 1-for-1 removal? Because we've seen Andrew get stuck on a bunch of 1-for-1 removal. Torrential Gearhulk is the answer.
You mean the sheer fact of trying to prolong the game and draw more cards isn't enough for you?
It's not intrinsically good enough. I have fallen into that trap before. I've made decks that just do that, but then just lose because they don't actually have a good late game.
Fair enough. All right, so it looks like that Spell Queller coming out. Is it attempting to ambush the Selfless Spirit?
If Andrew does that, then he ends up taking 7 off the Gideon plus the 1/1 plus the Raven Inspector. That's not going to work out very well for Andrew here.
Yeah, we're not exactly sure where. Yes, okay. This makes more sense. So that Spell Queller is jumping in front of that Gideon.
That still puts Andrew to 3 and facing down a lot of creatures here.
Smuggler's Copter. And we know that Zachary also has that Archangel Avacyn just waiting to come out on the battlefield too, like right now.
Well, that Selfless Spirit is still tapped, though. Zachary may be considering sacrificing it. And the reason you do that is to trigger Archangel Avacyn, and then she'll turn into Avacyn the Purifier on Andrew's upkeep, assuming Andrew does not have a response.
Yeah, so it looks like Zachary's going through the permutations here and asking Andrew how many cards he has in hand.
And how many are Stasis Snares? Andrew's already used multiple Stasis Snares. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
So it's not unreasonable for Zach to think, okay, maybe you just don't have another Stasis Snare, but it does not look like Zach went for it here. But of course, Andrew's in a situation now where he's dead to lethal attackers. if he taps out to deal with them, Zachary can just sacrifice Selfless Spirit end of turn to flip Avacyn. And if he doesn't, if he leaves all his mana up, then Zachary can just, use Jace, use Gideon, play a little bit more slowly.
Yeah, so it looks like Torrential Gearhulk is attacking. Archangel Avacyn's going to block. Selfless Spirit sacrificing to give Zachary's creatures indestructible.
So that'll make Avacyn survive this combat, and more importantly, or maybe equally importantly, flip Avacyn on Zachary's upkeep here.
Oh, but did you see that? There's a Stasis Snare in Andrew's hand.
All right, so he gets to Stasis Snare Avacyn in response to the trigger.
Bam.
But Gideon +1 attack can't get Immolate and Glared. Also, Smuggler's Copter can be animated, and Zachary even has a Spell Queller in his hand.
Looks like Zachary's going to take up with Gideon, finding a Selfless Spirit. Going to play that Spirit, crew the Copter, animate Gideon, bash with everybody, and there's the handshake. Zachary Kiihne improves to 11-0, undefeated here, around 11. GP Providence. All right, and that's going to do it here at GP Providence, round 11. Gabby Sports with Lee Scott Vargas.
Put your game to the test at a Grand Prix. These Magic celebrations are headlined by 2-day open tournaments with the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros from around the world. Find an upcoming Grand Prix near you at magic.wizards.com/Grand Prix.